Have you ever had that feeling, that pull to visit a place, not because it's beautiful, but because something tragic happened there? You know, an old prison, a battlefield, a memorial? It's a powerful thing, and it's actually a pretty popular form of travel. So, okay, let's dive into this really complex world of what's called dark tourism.
And it all really starts with this one fundamental question that might feel a little uncomfortable. Why are we, as people, so often drawn to these places of darkness and sorrow? Let's try and unpack that together in this explainer.
So first things first, let's get on the same page. What are we actually talking about here? Well, we're exploring this growing trend of people visiting sites that have a somber, often tragic past.
And here's the official definition for you. Dark tourism is basically traveling to places that are historically linked with death, tragedy, you get the idea. But honestly, as we're about to see, that definition is just the very beginning of a much deeper human experience.
All right, so now that we know what it is, let's get into the why. What is going on inside our heads that makes these destinations so compelling?
Well, the reasons are actually super complex and really varied. For some people, it's about connecting with history in a way you just can't get from a book. For others, it's a way to honor the people who were lost, and maybe to learn from the past so we don't repeat it. It can also be a way to process difficult emotions, or, just to satisfy that basic human curiosity about the biggest questions: life, death, and resilience.
Now, there's a big misconception here. It is so easy to just dismiss this whole thing as morbid curiosity, right? But the reality is often way more profound. For most visitors, it's a real search for understanding, a way to pay their respects and to truly grasp the scale of what happened. And you'll find that dark tourism isn't just one type of place. No way. It covers this incredibly broad spectrum of locations, and each one has its own unique pull. For example, you have a place like Alcatraz Island. Visitors walk through those cold cell blocks not just to hear stories about gangsters, but to actually feel the chilling isolation of the rock and confront a really harsh chapter of justice.
Then you've got sites of profound modern tragedy, like the Ground Zero Memorial. This is an ancient history. This is a living memorial. It's a deeply solemn space to reflect on an event that completely shaped the world we live in today.
Sometimes a single number can tell the whole story. 168. That's the number of victims remembered at the Oklahoma City National Memorial, each one represented by an empty, lit-up chair. It is such a powerful, sobering reminder of the individual lives behind the headlines.
History's major turning points are also huge draws, like the Gettysburg battlefield. I mean, you can stand on the very ground where over 50,000 soldiers became casualties, a place where a nation's future was literally decided in blood.
And then, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you find a place like the Stanley Hotel. Here, the darkness is all about the paranormal and pop culture. It taps into our love for a good ghost story and that desire to feel a little scared, but in a totally controlled and, let's face it, entertaining way.
But visiting these places comes with a heavy dose of responsibility. And this brings us to a really crucial part of our discussion, the ethical compass you need to navigate these experiences.
This leads to a really tough question. Is it just plain disrespectful to tour a place of tragedy? The answer, well, it depends entirely on how we approach it.
So, a respectful visit is all about following some core principles. It's about respecting the victims and their stories above all else. It's about being a responsible tourist, engaging with local communities, not taking inappropriate photos, please no selfies, and just following the site's rules. Okay, so let's turn these big ideas into some practical advice. How can you make sure your visit is both meaningful and responsible?
It really comes down to 3 simple steps. First, prepare. Do your homework. Learn the history before you even get there. Second, respect. Be mindful of how you act and why the place is so important. And third, support. Engage with local businesses and guides to make sure you're contributing in a positive way.
This quote really just hits the nail on the head. The very act of thinking about the ethics is what turns a simple visit into something that's responsible, memorable, and truly meaningful.
Because, ultimately, this is the main takeaway. Responsible dark tourism isn't about collecting cool sights or checking things off a list. It's about deepening our understanding of history, of humanity, and of ourselves.
And that brings us to our final thought. As these places get more and more popular, we all have to ask ourselves, where is that line? the line between solemn remembrance and simple entertainment? It's a question with no easy answer, but it's one that every single thoughtful traveler has to confront.